Dear soul, somewhere beyond the ticking clock, the clock we cling to, an unseen hand lifts the corner. The corner of tomorrow's curtain, faint silhouettes, appear triumph, tragedy, choices not yet made. The future, is it already etched, written in a quiet script, waiting for attentive eyes to notice and tonight. That script it has drifted soft as dust onto your screen, here with you, alone, inviting you to decide. Is foreknowledge a blessing, or is it a burden? A weight too heavy to carry? Ask yourself. Truly asked, if the path ahead were lit, illuminated for just a single breath, a fleeting moment, would you dare to keep looking? Would your gaze hold steady, or would you close your eyes tightly quickly, before destiny's light, destiny's pure, unfiltered light, became too bright to bear, too much for the human heart? In that hush, that silent space between courage and fear, stands a name, a woman, Jeane Dixon. She claimed to see those hidden lines, the lines of fate. She pointed ly, neffel, nchingly, to the date, 2025. She whispered, her voice a sigh against the winds of time, that the world would bend, perhaps it would break beneath its own weight. The weight of its choices, the weight of its destiny. The Prophet Awakens, Jeane Dixon's childhood visions. The story begins. 1904, the year, etched in time's memory. Beneath a sepia-tinted Wisconsin sky. A sky that had seen generations pass. Wheat fields swayed there, like mute metronomes, keeping a silent, rhythmic count. A Catholic church bell. It marked the hours with solemn patience, a sound of constancy, in a modest farmhouse nearby. Simple, yet filled with nascent dreams, a newborn girl. She was placed in a cradle carved by her father's careful hands, love in every line of wood. Her name, Jeane. It seemed ordinary, common, unassuming, yet every breath she drew, every small rise and fall of her chest, stirred something that felt impossibly old, ancient, as if echoes from forgotten epochs resided within her. Her first sign, it arrived as an ache of insistence, a knowing that would not be silenced. She was barely 5 years old, a small child in a vast world. She tugged at her mother's sleeve, her small hand insistent, and asked for an envelope with a black border. A strange request from such a young voice. "We don't keep such things," her mother murmured, voiced gentle, trying to soothe, smoothing the child's hair, a gesture of comfort. But Jeane repeated the request. All day long her green eyes, they were fixed on something distant, something unmoving, something only she could perceive. 10 days later, a letter came. It was draped in mourning black, just as she had said. Her grandfather's passing, announced precisely as the little girl had foretold. The house fell silent. A profound hush descended, the kind of silence that follows a secret finally spoken aloud, a truth acknowledged, a mystery unveiled. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. The ordinary rhythm of the farmhouse suddenly altered, touched by the extraordinary. Her parents exchanged looks, wonder, fear, dawning understanding. This was no childish fancy. This was something else, something profound, something that set Jeane apart. The weight of that black-bordered envelope felt heavier than paper and ink. It was the weight of a future known, a glimpse into the inevitable, and Jeane, small Jeane, had carried that glimpse with an unnerving calm, a calm that belied her tender years. The unseen script had brushed against her, and she had read its somber lines. Soon, after another moment, another glimpse. Jeane stood by the front gate, her small figure a silhouette against the wide fields. A chill October wind, it teased her braids loose, whipping strands of hair across her face. She announced with a bright certainty, a confidence that brooked no argument, "Daddy will bring home a big dog." She described it further, black with white patches. No one had mentioned a pet. There had been no discussions, no plans. Money was tight, a farmer's life, governed by seasons and thrift, and travel was rare. Journeys were not undertaken lightly. Yet 3 days later, her father returned. He came back from a distant business trip, a trip that had been ordinary in its inception, but a black and white sheepdog trotted at his heel. Faithful, loyal, as if summoned by her words alone. The dog was exactly as she described, black fur, white patches, a living, breathing confirmation. Her father stood amazed. How could she have known the sequence of events? The impulse buy, the long journey home with a new companion, all foreseen by his little girl. Standing by a windswept gate, these murmurs of the future, these whispers of events, yet to unfold, they unsettled the family. Deeply, how could they not? Their world of predictable routines, suddenly pierced by the unpredictable, by the uncanny, but fascination. That powerful human curiosity outweighed fear. The desire to understand, to witness, overcame the urge to turn away. This gift, this strange, undeniable gift, it was part of Jeane, and they loved Jeane. In 1911, the world was turning, new technologies, new ideas. An Egyptian palm reader, a mystic from a distant land, visited California, claiming to read the lines of destiny. The pathways etched in a person's hand. Jeane's parents, driven by a need to understand their daughter, or perhaps simply to see, embarked on a days-long train ride, a journey of hope, a journey of questions. The girl's small fingers pressed to the window pane, watching the world rush by, as mountains and spoo, like grey ribbons against the sky, majestic, ancient, silent witnesses. The mystic, a woman with eyes that seemed to hold ancient secrets, traced Jeane's palm in reverent silence. Her touch light, her focus intense. The lines on that small hand seemed to speak to her. Then she offered a single declaration, a pronouncement that would echo through Jeane's life. She will be a great seer. The words hung in the air, filled with significance. One who peers across the veil of time, across the boundary that separates now from then, the known from the unknown. Handing Jeane a tiny crystal sphere wrapped in soft protective silk, the reader almost whispered, her voice imbued with gravity. Guard it. Visions are both gift and weight, a blessing and a burden, a light and a shadow. That night, in the quiet of their temporary lodging, Jeane gazed into the crystal's pale firelight. The sphere felt cool in her small hands, its surface smooth. She saw not her own reflection, but something else, a fleeting image, a warning. She calmly warned the stranger, the palm reader who had given her the globe. Mind the stove. Her voice clear and certain. You will burn yourself. A simple caution, delivered with childlike innocence, yet carrying the weight of foresight. Days later, after they had returned home, a telegram arrived. The stark yellow paper, the typed, urgent words, the reader's hand. It had been badly scalded. Burned in her kitchen, just as Jeane had foreseen, an accident near a stove. The crystal now a confirmed conduit, a tangible link to her visions, rested on Jeane's bedside table. It seemed to glow faintly, as though memory itself had taken shape. A soft internal light, a silent testament to the unseen. But the gift, once a quiet whisper in childhood, a subtle stirring of intuition, began to speak louder, its voice growing in strength, in clarity, reaching ears of influence, men and women who shaped the world, altering fates, small and large, personal and public, and the gentle hush of a farmhouse in Wisconsin. The scent of hay and baked bread, the rhythm of seasons, soon gave way to salons of Hollywood, fame, glimmering with artificial lights and whispered secrets, and the marble corridors of power, where decisions affecting millions were made. The child seer was stepping into a larger world, a world that both needed and feared what she could see. Hollywood 1940-2, the world was at war, but Hollywood still spun its dreams, a beacon of glamour in troubled times. Through the beveled glass doors of an exclusive Wilshire Boulevard salon drifted the scent of lilac, pomade, and heated curling irons, an olfactory lullaby for the silver screen elite. The goddesses and gods of celluloid mirrors caught the sparkle of diamond earrings, the flash of perfect smiles, But Jeane Dixon stood apart. Even in this room of luminaries, her posture tranquil, composed. Her eyes focused. Not on the glittering reflections, not on the famous faces, but on something just beyond the walls. Something unseen by others. Across the room, actress Carole Lombard, a star at her zenith, flawless blonde waves, a vibrant crimson smile. She laughed with stylists. Her voice light, carefree. Unaware. Completely unaware that destiny, a silent, uninvited guest, was already leaning over her shoulder, a shadow in the bright lights. Jeane approached, her movement quiet, unobtrusive, her voice low, soft. Enough to dissolve. Into the soft hiss of hairdryers, the gentle chatter of the salon. In the next 6 months, Jeane urged, her eyes holding Lombard's, seeking to convey the urgency. The gravity, do not fly. A direct, unequivocal warning. If you do, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, but each word laden with foreboding. The sky will not return you. The warning was precise, almost surgical in its clarity. No room for misinterpretation, no ambiguity. Lombard, accustomed to adulation, perhaps to eccentricity, offered a polite half-smile, a fleeting acknowledgement, the kind reserved for well-meaning strangers, or perhaps overzealous fans. "I'll be fine," she replied, her tone light, dismissive, confident in her own charmed life. "The country needs war bonds, and Detroit is waiting. Duty called. Patriotism. The war effort." These were tangible, urgent demands. A vague warning from a stranger, easily set aside. 6 days later, only 6 short days. January 16th, a date that would be seared into memory. A DC-3 aeroplane, a workhorse of the skies, roared into an indigo Nevada night. Darkness stretched vast and indifferent. Minutes from safety, so close to its destination. Pilot error, a human misjudgment, a fatal confluence of circumstances, sliced the fuselage. Against Potosi Mountain, a jagged peak in the darkness, fire lit the slopes. Scarlet against the black canvas of night. A terrible, beautiful, horrifying sight. And the actress's bright laughter, her vibrant spirit, her dazzling smile, extinguished. In ash. And twisted aluminum. The news spread like wildfire. Shock. Grief. A nation mourned one of its brightest stars in Hollywood circles. Amidst the sorrow and the eulogies, whispers kindled, soft at first, then growing louder. The woman, the quiet woman in the salon. The one who foresaw the crash. She had a name, Jeane Dixon. And that name, was starting to echo. Beyond California's tune-drenched palms. Beyond the studio gates, it carried with it a chill. The chill of a future known. Destiny unavoidable, the weight of her words. Now undeniable. Jeane felt no triumph. Only the profound sorrow of a vision fulfilled in tragedy. The burden of the seer, the pain of knowing, and the inability to change the course, if the heart chose not to listen. Washington, D.C., November 1944. The capital city. Wartime gray. A somber palette, reflecting global conflict. Ration lines snaked around corners. Symbols of shared sacrifice. Blackout curtains, draped windows, shielding the city from imagined threats. The rattle of troop trains. At Union Station. A constant rhythm of departure and arrival. Of hope and fear. Yet inside the White House, the very heart of the nation's power, Franklin D. Roosevelt. FDR still radiated that invincible charm, that reassuring confidence that had guided the nation through depression and war, even as his hands trembled slightly on the arms of his wheelchair. The immense strain of leadership, taking its unseen toll. A discreet phone call, quiet, unofficial, had summoned Jeane. She moved through snow-dusted gates, past stern-faced Marine guards, down lamplit corridors, lined with portraits of past presidents. Silent witnesses to history. To the map. Room's heavy door. A room where global strategies were plotted, where the fate of millions was decided. The president's voice when he finally spoke was softer than on his fireside chats. Less resonant, more vulnerable. Tired. Curious. And tinged with an unspoken dread. A weariness that clung to him. "Tell me," he asked, his gaze direct, searching. Fixing on Jeane. "How long do I have? Not for the war. Not for the term, but how long do I have to serve?" The question hovered. Like candle smoke in the still air, heavy, pregnant with unspoken implications. The fate of a leader. The fate of a nation. Jeane met his gaze. Without flinching, her own eyes clear, steady, reflecting the somber truth she carried. "No more than 6 months," she answered. Her voice quiet, but firm. Certain. The words seemed to chill the air between them. A sudden drop in temperature. A premonition taking vocal form, though Roosevelt, a man accustomed to dire news, to immense pressures, merely nodded. A slow, thoughtful inclination of his head. His eyes reflective. Deep like the Hudson River he'd once sailed. Holding depths of thought unseen, he did not question further. He did not rage against the dying of the light. Perhaps he, too, felt the encroaching shadows. Perhaps her words confirmed a hidden fear. A silent understanding passed between them. The seer and the president, bound by a moment of profound truth. April 12, 1940-5, barely 5 months later. The prediction echoing towards its fulfillment. Warm Springs, Georgia, a place of recovery, of attempted respite. An ache behind his eyes, sudden sharp. A fallen hand of cards, a game unfinished, then silence, a profound world-altering silence, cerebral hemorrhage. The official cause, the physical event, but for those who knew, it was the echo of Jeane Dixon's words, made manifest. Flags dropped to half-staff. Across 48 states, a nation plunged into mourning. Its leader, its anchor, gone, many recalled. In hushed tones, the quiet woman who had walked out of the White House months before into a flurry of snow and secrecy. Her prophecy delivered, her burden shared, yet still her own. The weight of knowing, the silence of the aftermath. Jeane heard the news. The bells tolling, the somber pronouncements. There was no satisfaction, only a deep, resonant sorrow, a confirmation of her unwelcome gift. The script of destiny, read aloud once more, its tragic lines, unchangeable, even before. Roosevelt's casket, draped in the stars and stripes, rolled slowly down Pennsylvania Avenue, a nation grieving, a world watching. Jeane's prophetic current, her unique, undeniable gift, had surged elsewhere, touching another life, another destiny. One evening in 1944, before her White House visit, during a charity gala, a glittering affair, thick with the scent of cigars, and the rousing sound of Sousa marches, patriotism worn like an expensive gown, she clasped the hand of Senator Harry S. Truman, a man from Missouri, relatively unassuming, yet a household name on the global stage. Instead of small talk, the usual pleasantries exchanged at such events, she offered a certainty, a direct, unvarnished prediction. "You will be president someday." Her eyes, as always, seemed to look through him, beyond him to a future he could not yet imagine. Truman blinked. Behind his rimless glasses, taken aback by her sudden pronouncement, half amused, thinking it perhaps a jest, or a flight of fancy, half uneasy, strange feeling stirring within him. The conviction in her voice was unsettling. He was vice president then, a heartbeat away, but the full weight of the office seemed distant. Less than a year later, after her meeting with Roosevelt, after the chilling 6-month prediction, the vice presidential renomination found him. It felt different this time, like a letter, delivered in the dark. Its contents, unknown but deeply significant. Then, Roosevelt's passing. The nation reeled. The world held its breath, and the prophecy, Jeane Dixon's words, at that noisy gala, sealed itself, became immutable fact. When Chief Justice Stone swore Harry S. Truman in as the 33rd President of the United States. Beneath the grand Capitol dome, a farmer, Bada said a senator. Now the leader of the free world, just as she had said. The newspapers, always hungry for a compelling story, a touch of the mystical in a rational world, coined her the Seer of Washington. Her name, her face, began appearing in columns, filed between war dispatches and ticker tape. Victories, a strange juxtaposition, prophecy and politics, visions and current events. Photographers tried. They attempted to capture the exact moment her eyes seemed to glaze, to turn inward. Those instances when she listened to something no microphone could catch, a voice from beyond the veil, a whisper from the future. But film, that mechanical, I can't frame the future, it can only record the present, the fleeting moment, slipping away from a salon's scented hush to the resolute desk in the Oval Office. Jeane's visions, her unwelcome yet undeniable insights, threaded private lives, and public destinies together, intertwining them in complex, often tragic patterns, each fulfilled warning. Each accurate prediction added another heavier bead, to the rosary of her experiences, a rosary she carried, in secret, in the quiet chambers of her heart. Proof to believers who sought her out with hope and fear, a challenge to skeptics who dismissed her as a charlatan or lucky guesser, and always a burden to herself, the weight of knowing, the pain of unheeded warnings, the isolation of her unique perception. Yet, even as the nation's most guarded corridors opened to her, even as presidents and prime ministers sought her counsel, she sensed the horizon of her gift, stretching further, still, beyond the immediate, beyond the personal, toward events that would test the very edges of imagination, of human understanding, and somewhere in that gathering distance, in the mists of time yet to come, lay a year. Neither she, nor the world, could ignore an autumn of reckoning, numbered simply 1960-3. A shadow lurking in the bright noon of optimism, and beyond that, further still, a date etched deeper in the dark fabric of the future, 2020-5. A breath held, like the profound, unnerving hush before a storm front, before the skies unleash their fury, and then we move onward. Through the unfolding scroll of time, the Capitol dome, a familiar symbol of American power, shimmered, under a late summer sun. In 1940-5, the war in Europe was over. But the world was still reeling. Recon, Guring. Winston Churchill's motorcade, dark, imposing vehicles, crawled along Constitution Avenue. A slow procession inside the British limousine. Plush leather seats creaked, familiar sound to the statesman. Cigarette smoke. His constant companion curled like uncertain thoughts. Drifting in the confined space, he had insisted on a private audience. This American oracle, this Jeane Dixon, intrigued him. A man of logic, a man of war, a man of words, yet open to the mysteries that lay beyond. In a tucked-away parlor of the Mayflower Hotel, a bastion of Washington society, Jeane Dixon greeted the Prime Minister with a polite nod, her demeanor calm, respectful. Her eyes, those extraordinary eyes, reflecting both reverence for his stature and a sense of inevitability, of a fate already written. Churchill, never one for wasted pleasantries, got straight to the point, his voice gravelly, from years of speeches, from war. And from whiskey. Will I be returned to no town? He asked. The question was direct. The seat of British power. His political future. Jeane's reply came as if dictated from elsewhere, a voice, clear. Unwavering, untouched by his imposing presence. No. A simple, stark negative. The people will choose differently. His jowls, that famous bulldog visage, flushed crimson, a wave of disbelief, perhaps anger. After all, he had steered Britain through the Blitz, through blood, toil, tears, and sweat. He was the lion. Who could possibly unseat the lion? Especially in victory's hour, it seemed inconceivable, ungrateful. Yet in July's polls, the British electorate, exercising their democratic right, delivered a stunning verdict, a political earthquake. Churchill out, Clement Attlee in, the architect of victory. Suddenly, a civilian. The Seer's reputation, Jeane Dixon's name, crossed the Atlantic, carried on the front page of The Times and other major newspapers. Her name whispered beneath Big Ben's ponderous shadow. In the pubs of Fleet Street, in the halls of Parliament, another impossible prediction made. Real. The quiet woman from America had seen the turn of history's tide, when the world's most powerful. Were blinded by the present. But it was not until she stared into the darkest corridor of American hope, of American optimism, that her gift, her strange, often terrifying ability, carved itself into the very marrow of a nation. 1950-6. A decade after the war, America was booming, confident, looking to the future. Parade magazine, a widely circulated Sunday supplement, pressed 37 million copies, each one carrying an article titled, "What Lies Ahead for Our Next President?" A speculative piece, mixing political analysis with a touch of the sensational. Buried within its columns, among other predictions from various sources, Jeane Dixon's words stood out in chilling retrospect. A Democrat will win in 1960, she predicted. Clear, concise, but then she added a darker qualification. But his triumph will be brief. A shadow cast over a future victory. His life cut short. While still in office, few paused over the line then. In 1950-6. Politics makes prophets of many. And Cassandra's too. Predictions of doom were not uncommon, often dismissed, often forgotten. Then November. 1960, a charismatic young senator from Massachusetts, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, a Democrat crowned president in a fiercely contested election. The White House, suddenly filled with youthful energy, with children's laughter, with shimmering possibilities, a new Camelot. A time of hope and vigor. Yet, Jeane's visions regarding this vibrant young leader sharpened, they grew more intense. More specific, more troubling. She saw a dense cloud, a dark, oppressive miasma, drifting over Pennsylvania Avenue, over the White House itself, obscuring the bright promise. A persistent, ominous image. She spoke of it often, to those who would listen. A sense of impending tragedy she could not shake. Her warnings grew more urgent, more desperate. She tried to reach the president's circle, to convey the danger she perceived, the feeling of a clock ticking down, of an inevitable, terrible event. Looming on the horizon, the weight of this particular vision was immense, almost unbearable. She saw the youth, the vitality, the hope he represented, and then the darkness. The sudden, violent extinguishing of that light. She mentioned a date, November 20-2. She felt a profound dread associated with the South, with Dallas. Her heart ached with the foreknowledge. The world celebrated Camelot. Jeane Dixon saw its tragic end, and then, November 20-2. 1960-3. Texas, the motorcade, the bright sun, the cheering crowds, the shots, the unbelievable, the unthinkable, happened. The young president, slain, his triumph, indeed, brief, his life cut short while still in office. The nation, the world, plunged into an abyss of grief, disbelief, horror. The dense cloud she had saw, had descended, darker and more terrible than anyone could have imagined. Jeane Dixon's words from that Parade magazine article, years before, were unearthed, reprinted, circulated, with stunned awe and chilling accuracy. She had seen it, she had warned, and it had come to pass, exactly as foretold. The name Jeane Dixon was now inextricably linked with one of America's greatest tragedies. Her gift, or her curse, exposed to the world in the most brutal and undeniable way. The weight of that fulfilled prophecy settled upon her, a heavy cloak of sorrow and unwanted fame. She had peered into the abyss, and the abyss had stared back through the lens of history. Her visions did not cease. They continued to ripple outwards, touching upon other monumental events, the quest for the stars, the great leap for mankind. She spoke of a tragedy in the space program of fire and loss before the Apollo 1 disaster that claimed the lives of 3 brave astronauts. Another somber note in the symphony of her prophecies, a warning or perhaps unheard by those who could act. The relentless march of progress sometimes stumbles, and she, it seemed, felt the tremors beforehand, and then further into the mists of time, she saw a great illness, shadow that would fall upon the entire globe, affecting breath, affecting connection, isolating communities, challenging the very fabric of society, a pandemic, words that would become all too familiar. Decades after she spoke them, she described a time of masks, of fear, of profound global disruption, a test for humanity, a time when the world would hold its breath collectively, waiting for the fever to break. These glimpses of Apollo's fire, of a world stilled by sickness, added to her complex legacy. Were they precise? Were they open to interpretation? Skeptics debated. Believers found confirmation, but the echoes of her words resonated with uncanny familiarity as history unfolded, each event, a stone dropped into the pool of time, its ripples reaching back to the seer who had spoken of them in hushed tones or public pronouncements. The burden of seeing, of knowing, never lifted, it only grew heavier with each passing year, each fulfilled vision, and always, looming in the distant future of her sight, was that specific year, that pivotal point to 2020-5.22. She spoke of it with a particular gravity, a sense of profound importance, a culmination, or perhaps a breaking point. She did not always offer specifics. Not like a date for an assassination or the outcome of an election. This was larger, more encompassing, more elemental. The world, she said, would bend under an immense weight. The weight of its accumulated actions, its choices, its karma. Perhaps bend but would it break? Perhaps break, she whispered. A possibility, a dire warning, a question mark hanging over the future. What could cause such a monumental shift? Such a crisis? She hinted at great turmoil, at upheaval, natural, political, spiritual, a convergence of forces, testing humanity. To its core, she spoke of a false prophet, of deception on a global scale, of a struggle between darkness and light, not in a simplistic, cartoonish way, but as a profound, internal and external battle. For the soul of the world, the year 2025, not necessarily an end, but a transition, a painful, difficult rebirth, or a descent into deeper shadows. The choice, she often implied, still rested with humanity. Foreknowledge was not a fixed sentence, but a warning, a call to awaken, to change course. Her gaze, when she spoke of this, seemed to pierce through the listener, to the very soul. Plea from the edge of time to listen, to see, to act before the light of destiny became too bright, too harsh, too unforgiving. She described a shift in the earth itself, changes in climate, in the very ground beneath our feet, as if nature itself would cry out, rebel against the imbalance. She saw ideologies clashing, nations in disarray, a great searching for truth, amidst a sea of lies. The structures that had seemed so permanent, so unshakable, would tremble, would be tested, and in that testing, the true metal of humanity would be revealed. Would it bend towards wisdom, towards compassion, towards unity, or would it break under the strain of fear, of division, of selfishness? The year 2025, a fulcrum, a pivot point in the long, unfolding story of mankind. Her words about this year were not a casual prediction. They were the culmination of her life's work, her deepest, most troubling insight, a message she felt compelled to deliver, regardless of the disbelief or the fear it might engender. The quiet girl from Wisconsin, who saw a black-bordered envelope, now saw a world teetering on a precipice, and the date etched in her mind's eye, 2025. So, the question remains, as you sit before your screen, the inheritor of this soft, drifted script, this echo of a seer's warning. Is foreknowledge a blessing? Does it empower? Does it guide? Does it offer a chance to avert disaster? Or is it a burden, a weight that crushes hope, a prophecy that becomes self-fulfilling through the very fear it generates? Jeane Dixon carried this question. Throughout her life, she walked with kings and presidents. She whispered warnings to movie stars. She saw death and triumph, love and loss, the grand sweep of history, and the intimate details of individual lives. Did her visions change anything? Did Carol Lombard's fate alter because of the warning? No. Did FDR live a day longer? No. Did JFK avoid Dallas? No. The script of destiny seems to have an inexorable force. Yet, the choice to look, the choice to listen, the choice to be aware, that perhaps is where our power lies, not necessarily to rewrite the entire play, but to choose how we act our part, with courage, with compassion, with open eyes, even when the light is blinding. Jeane Dixon pointed to 22:5. She spoke of a world bending, perhaps breaking. Beneath a weight, we are living in the shadow of that prediction. Or, perhaps, in the dawn of its unfolding. Look around, feel the currents of our time, the anxieties, the hopes, the rapid, often bewildering changes. Is the world bending now? Are we feeling that weight? The faint silhouettes of triumph, of tragedy, of choices yet to be made, are they becoming clearer? The curtain of tomorrow is always being lifted, moment by moment, by that unseen hand. The script is always drifting, waiting for attentive eyes, like yours, to notice, to discern, to decide whether to face the light, or close your eyes. The legacy of Jeane Dixon is not just in the predictions fulfilled or the warnings unheeded. It is in the enduring human quest to understand our place in time, to grapple with fate and free will, to seek meaning in the unfolding mystery. The quiet script still waits. The year 2025, once a distant point on her prophetic horizon, is now upon us, or nearly so. What will it bring? What will it demand? Perhaps the answers lie not in the stars, nor in the pronouncements of seers, but within ourselves, within our collective choices, our courage, our fears. The light of destiny may indeed be bright, but, perhaps, just perhaps, it is also the light of awakening, the light of profound transformation. The choice to look, to truly see, remains yours alone. In the quiet of this moment, beyond the ticking clock, listen. What does the silence tell you now?